McNabb, and I'm having conversations with candidates running for office within Loudon County and its municipalities. For instance, this race is the Loudon City Mayor race. To begin, would you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, your background, and since you are an incumbent, how long you've served and what role that was in.
Sure. My name is John Cardwell, and I currently serve on Loudon City Council.
Okay.
I was elected in 2022, so I've just finished my first term. I was born and raised in Loudon. My dad, Jim Cardwell, taught school here in Loudon, and then later worked at Viscase. My mother was a social worker here in Loudon. I'm proud father of 2 grown children, proud grandfather of 2 grandchildren. I graduated Loudon in 1980, went to University of Tennessee on an ROTC scholarship, and when my wife and I both graduated, we promptly went into the Army, went to Germany, excuse me, and served 10 years on active duty. During that time, we served overseas, stateside. I was in combat during Desert Storm as a paratrooper with the 82nd. In 1994, I transitioned from the active duty to the reserve and started a civilian career in finance. My degree is in finance and banking, so I went into that field. I worked with Merrill Lynch as a financial advisor for about 10 years. Then I was recruited and started working for United Community Bank here in East Tennessee. And I ran all the trust and investment operations for them in the state. In 2013, the Army Reserve promoted me to Brigadier General. And so I had a decision. So I went back into the military full time. I became the commanding general for all Army Reserve in the Pacific. And so, quite a large command there. Then I was worked out of Houston, Texas, and in my last assignment in the Army I was a major general working at U.S. Northcom. In the community, I coached basketball for 15 years up at North Middle with my wife, both the girls and boys team. I was a Boy Scout leader. I've served on the Planning Commission, the Industrial Development Board, and also on the Loudon Utility Board in conjunction with my current position. I married my high school sweetheart, and we've been married since 1985.
Oh, so in understanding city government, can you kind of explain what the role and responsibility is of the mayor of Loudon?
Well, it's interesting with the what city government does. It's sort of 3 things. First is public safety.
Okay.
So in the public safety department, you have the Loudon Fire, Loudon Police, and Loudon Codes Enforcement.
Okay.
Then you have Public Works. And in the Public Works, that's the folks that pick up the trash, make sure your streets are paved, and also mowing and taking care of right-of-ways. Then you have Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. And of course, that's the department that maintains the physical parks. Also runs the programs for recreation, the flag football, all the different sporting events. And then now what we've recently added was tourism to help build and develop a robust tourism for Loudon.
Okay. Now, Loudon City is within Loudon County, and Lenoir City is another municipality. How would you describe the working relationship between the city of Loudon and Loudon County and the neighboring municipalities? What's working well and where, and if anywhere, could it be improved?
We can do better.
Okay.
I don't know if you've recently seen that Loudon County just sued the city of Loudon. And I think a lot of it is communication. We need to do a better job of communicating of what our goals and visions are with what Loudon County, what their goals and vision, and have a better working relationship with first the Loudon County mayor, and second are the 2 representatives that are elected to first district that
Okay.
encompasses Loudon and the county commission, to make sure we all understand where it is we want to go and not have county goals, city goals. Try to have that common vision and those common goals, and we could do better at that. And that's one of the things I want to do as mayor, is to try to open those lines of communication and have true dialogue to make sure that we understand each other.
Looking back over your time, in office, this being your term ending, what accomplishment are you most proud of?
Well, first of all, government is a team sport.
Okay.
You don't do anything really by yourself. And so, but what you can do is you can lead efforts.
Okay.
And you can initiate efforts. So some of the things that I'm proud of is my background being military and in finance is planning. So I was an Army planner. I was a planner for the Joint Force, and I was also a financial planner in my 20 years in the civilian life. And so that's my basis. That's in my DNA. And that's what I've brought to city government. So I help reintroduce, I should say, strategic planning, true strategic planning, not just a forum with a bunch of good ideas, but a true comprehensive plan for both the city of Loudon and Loudon Utilities. Now, that plan has now been adopted, and hopefully tonight at our meeting, we'll adopt the strategic plan for the city. And that's what guides us. That's what helps bring those visions and goals together. Also, as a member of the downtown committee, I was tired of seeing projects just sort of haphazard, ad hoc. Nothing really came together. So I came up with the idea, wrote the scope of work for a downtown comprehensive plan to help kickstart the revitalization of downtown Loudon. And that plan has now been adopted, and now we're in phase 2 of breaking it down into the annual work plans and to bring in private partnerships, to look at grants and different government funding to try to make it work. And the other thing is, history is my passion. And one of the first things is I came up with the idea and got city council to pass that we now have a formal historic preservation advisory committee that I've chaired for since we started it. And this committee has done a lot of great stuff. One is we got Loudon designated as a certified local government with the Department of the Interior. And that designation, it required us, number one, is I rewrote the historic ordinance of how we protect our historic landmarks, got that passed through City Council, did the application in the Department of the Interior, and once we got that designation, it opened the door to grants. And the first grant that we're able to get was to do an asset inventory of Loudon to find out just what historic landmarks and structures that we have and be able to have it in a database. The second grant that we just got about 2 weeks ago was to update our historic guidelines. Property owners didn't know what the guidelines were. There were more suggestions. Now we're going to rewrite those, that if you're a property owner, you know what the standards are, but also to help property owners to know about grants or tax breaks or anything to help restore those historic landmarks. So very proud of the work done with historic preservation.
Can you give us a snapshot of the city finances? Where were they when you took office? Where are they today? And what are your long-term goals for Loudon?
Well, of course, again, my background in financial planning. So the first budget that I was connected with was, I was elected in November of 22. So it was the 23-24 budget. And when the budget was first presented, I'll say it was a train wreck. We're about $5 million in debt. Previous councils and leadership had decided to borrow money, about $3 million, to pave roads. Now, we have to pave roads every year. That's like borrowing money to go eat every day. You have to pay for it out of cash flow. And so one of the things I did was I came up with an alternative budget that would pay down about $2 million of that debt and also restructure some of the revenue streams to where we could cover a lot of the expenses with current revenue. And it was a step forward. We weren't there yet, but we're a step forward. The next year, which would be the 24-25 budget, that was the first budget in years that we were able to pass a budget that didn't require us to borrow money or dip into the reserve to pay for city operations. Very proud of that budget. But then the last two budgets, which I voted against, and the only person to vote against them, put us right back into deficit. Growth of government exploded. We didn't look very, very close at revenue streams. And now if we keep this path up, in about 2 to 2.5 years, we're going to spend most of our reserve fund and be about 1.2 to 1.5 in deficit when it comes to our capital needs. Because the budget's in 4 pieces. You have personnel, operating, maintenance, but then you have capital projects. And I said that's paving your roads, replacing your vehicles, buying trash trucks, dumpsters, fire hoses, things like that. And previous councils had just sort of pushed those things off. We can't push them off in the future. That pushing a requirement off is never an answer to balancing the budget. So I wanted to continue to try to bring discipline to budgeting for Loudon, because money is the lifeblood of the city. If you have no money, you don't have a city. You can't do anything. And I want to continue to work hard as mayor of Loudon to turn that around.
So, and politics often receives more attention than policy. As mayor, you represent every resident of the city of Loudon, regardless of political affiliation. How much does your personal political philosophy influence the way you govern? How do you ensure you're serving the entire community?
Well, I don't have a political philosophy. Okay. I have a leadership philosophy. And that's what the mayor of Loudon is a leader. Now, if you look at it, the charter of Loudon says that the mayor is the ceremonial head. Okay. So the mayor has very little statutory authority. But the power, if you want to call it that, of the mayor is influence. Mm-hmm. And it's the influence they use to bring people together, to recognize goals, and to that common vision that I keep talking about. When I was the commanding general out in the Pacific, my command covered 7 time zones. I had thousands of soldiers and civilians in 2 states, 2 U.S. territories, a Commonwealth, and 2 foreign countries. It covered numerous cultures and peoples. For example, the soldiers just in my unit represented 7 religions, not denominations, religions, 28 languages. So when I would travel to Japan to one of my units, I couldn't order the government of Japan to do anything as much as I could order the governor of Alaska, Hawaii. It was all about influence. And influence, what people look for is that leadership philosophy of treating everybody with respect, listening to all opinions, and being honorable and ethical in everything that you do. And with that, you build that influential power. And that's what the city of mayor does, because the mayor of a city does. That I think people don't want another politician as mayor. They're looking for a leader, and that's why I'm running.
If elected, what are your top priorities for the next 4 years? What policies or initiatives would you like to accomplish?
Well, we hit on one. Number one, we have to get our finances straight. As I said, without that, nothing else happens. The second is we have to control growth. Now, you hear that a lot. Every politician says that. But it's about controlling growth before it controls us. And controlling growth is more than just voting yes or no at a meeting or putting a temporary moratorium or this. It's about actually leading the efforts of making the real changes that we need. Our land use plan is out of date. Our zoning ordinances are out of date. We hired Professor Snyder, came in. He has about 40 years of teaching urban planning at the University of Tennessee and throughout Tennessee. He looked at our zoning and said it was the most convoluted and confusing one he'd ever seen in his career. Well, that puts us very vulnerable to developers that can come in and in those gray areas that we may not have a very good ordinance that can take advantage of us. We've got to get that fixed, or we'll be in lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit with in arguments with developers. So we've got to control the growth. The other is we've got to kickstart downtown revitalization. I know you're probably just as tired as I am, and when you drive across the bridge, you see all the vacant land sitting there, and it's just been sitting there. Part of what I talked about earlier is that downtown revitalization or that downtown comprehensive plan that I initiated as a member of the downtown committee. That's the blueprint. Now, what I like about it is that we spend a lot of time asking for public input. What does the public want us to see to do with that land? What type of events, what type housing, what type businesses? But the other is that I demanded was in that plan was a deep dive on economic analysis. How many restaurants can we support? What type of retail businesses? Because again, you can't ask business owners to come in if it's not going to be economically viable for them. Or you'll see time after time a business will start and it will leave. So that's another effort. And then all with that is that continued focus on historic preservation of the downtown. I don't want to see our old buildings knocked down. I want to see businesses come in and rehab those buildings and use them as part of the overall effort to revitalize downtown.
So you touched on this, but I kind of want to dive a little deeper with this question. Growth and development do continue to shape our community. How do you balance that attracting new businesses, housing investment, while preserving the character and quality of life of the residents?
That's the key. And that was part of that developing that downtown plan. And as I said earlier, planning is my background. And I was tired of seeing just good ideas. You see a good idea here, one here, and it didn't all make sense. We were this, and we need to do this. It needs to all come together to accomplish that vision. And so that was one. The other is, what do we really need, and what do the people want downtown? And that was part of that, soliciting those ideas of, is it more restaurants? Is it more retail? Is it things to do at night? Is it things for tourism? That's what that plan helps bring together. But also, we have a housing crunch in Loudon. But as I always tell people, don't be in a hurry to fix it, because that pressure has been good for Loudon. You now see more and more of the older homes being rehabbed and refurbished. If you all of a sudden just open the door for a lot of development on the fringe, then people will move out of downtown to go there, and then downtown will just sort of fall apart. Well, now with that demand for housing, you see those homes, as I said, being redone. You can drive around Loudon and see that. That's good for Loudon, and we need to enable that to make sure we have the right zoning, the right historic guidelines to make sure that what is being done to the old homes or newer homes fit into the character of Loudon. Because at the end of the day, we want Loudon to remain Loudon and not become something that we all don't recognize.
You mentioned this earlier. As mayor, you help develop city budget or influence, oversee city operations in partnership with city government, city council. As Loudon continues to grow, do you anticipate the need for additional employees, expanded city services? If so, how do you balance the needs with responsible budgeting?
So again, and you've hit it, it's a great question about the balance between the size of government versus the burden that you put on the taxpayer. Number one is that we started taking the steps on the utility side, and we're starting to take them on the city side, that growth has to pay for growth. We can't burden current taxpayers with the cost of a new development or a new sewer line or new streets or anything like that. Growth has to pay for growth. And then the city services, you have to really look hard. For example, we have a need in our codes enforcement and our planning. Because of growth, we need to make sure that we can appropriately evaluate applications for building permits and variances and things like that. We need some help there. We always have to be very closely watch our police and fire protection. Fire protection, you have an ISO rating, and that's the rating that tells basically what your insurance costs are in the city of Loudon based on our fire protection. We're a level 3 right now. We want to keep it that way. And so you have to have so many firemen per homes, per the area you cover, and because that costs people money. And then make sure you have enough in the public safety. But at the end of the day, you have to have enough revenue to pay for it all. And that's what we're talking about. We have to get more innovative on our revenue streams. It's not always just raise property taxes, but it's where we have different, where we have pilots with different organizations, where we have tax incentives to grow the tax base. We have to use all those to balance it, because you can't just grow the size of government to meet growth and not pay for it, because that's sort of where we are right now, and we got to fix that.
At the end of another term, if you win this one, what would success look like, and how should the people of Loudon measure whether you've been successful as mayor?
When you talk to people who live in Loudon, they're very proud of Loudon.
Yeah.
And success to me comes in several. One is, I want the citizens of Loudon to be proud of their city government, to be proud of their elected officials. They're very proud of the employees. We have great employees. But I also want them to be proud of that their elected officials are open, transparent, and are working for them and not themselves or a small group. So that's number one. The other is, it's going to be more what they feel versus what they see. And that's when I go back to talking about balancing the budgets. They're going to feel that in their pocketbook, that we're doing everything we can do to protect every nickel of revenue that comes in and not overburden them tax-wise. They're going to feel the effects of better zoning, that we're not, they don't see Loudon turn into something they don't want it to be. But hopefully what they'll see is a revitalized downtown. Hopefully they'll see the effects of it. So it's a combination of all those things, between the pride of their government, that the government structurally is working correctly, and then they'll see the results of that in the town.
Finally, is there anything we haven't discussed that you'd like the voters of Loudon to know? Is there anything I haven't asked that you'd like to get out there?
One is, the reason I'm running is to help bring almost 40 years of experience, both in the financial world and the leadership world. I want to bring that to Loudon. I've started it with my first 4 years on city council, and I will continue it as the mayor of Loudon. And also to bring ethical leadership, that people can truly trust the words that you say and the actions that you do. I've told many politicians that It's not always what you do, it's how you do it. At the end of the day, we may not agree on an issue,
Mm-hmm.
but I always want you to know that your opinion is valued, that you've been heard, and that you've had a chance to be involved. And it was transparent, that nothing happens behind the curtain. And so that's what I want to tell the voters of Loudon and the citizens of Loudon, that that's the type of leadership that I want to bring to the office of mayor.
Well, the last day to register for this election is October 5th, early voting October 14th through 29th, and then election day is back on a Tuesday this time, November 3rd. And I just want to thank you for joining me and having this conversation and sharing your thoughts with the citizens of Loudon.
Well,
So
thank you
thank
very
you.
much. And I appreciate you doing this and the effort that you do to help inform our citizens.